Hello, my name is Sylvia Reyna, Archivist Librarian in Texana Genealogy of the San Antonio Public Library. As one of the most influential African American community leaders in San Antonio, Charles Bellinger came from the cotton fields and gambling houses of Lockhart in Caldwell County, Texas. The story goes that he relocated to San Antonio around 1905 on his way to Reno, Nevada. Charles Bellinger married Celestine Pullman in 1896. They had 11 children. Only 5 lived to maturity. His children were very important to him, and he invested well in their education. His eldest son, Charles V. Bellinger, Jr., better known as Velmo, mirrored his father's successful occupation. His daughter, Lillian, was a successful realtor with Bellinger Stillwell Company. Ruth studied at Howard University and became a doctor and served as a past president of the local chapter of the NAACP. His son Anthony, better known as Harry, grew up to be a lawyer after finishing at the University of Pennsylvania and was an attorney for the NAACP. Daughter Cecilia acquired paralysis at the age of 5 and only lived to the age of 31. Between 1910 and 1925, Bellinger began building what would eventually become a vast business empire that started with a pool hall, a saloon, a cafe, and a theater. In 1922, for reasons not stated in the decree, Charles and Celestine divorced. He married Addie Ray Scott in 1925, and by 1930, he lived with his family in the mansion at 518 South New Braunfels. By the late 1920s and early 30s, the Bellinger empire had expanded to include Bellinger Realty and Construction Company, Bellinger Auto Livery, a barbershop, a private lending service for blacks, and a lottery. His printing company competed as a local baseball team called the Billinger Printers. As a powerful black political boss on the city's east side, Charles Bellinger changed the face of San Antonio politics. He organized, along with African American preachers and black voters, to support mayoral and city council candidates. He would often pay constituents poll tax and would suggest how they should cast their vote, a fact which greatly influenced the political outcome. Mr. Bellinger was a philanthropist and generously and frequently contributed to the Guadalupe College, an African-American educational institution in Seguin, Texas. In spite of all his good works and efforts to help the people on the East Side, the Bellinger family was not immune to the struggles of racism and harassment from the Ku Klux Klan. In 1935, they awoke to a cross burning on the East Side estate. The inflammatory rhetoric of opposing politicians was catching up with him. According to the book African Americans and Race Relations in San Antonio by Kenneth Mason, Maverick played a significant role in getting Bellinger indicted and convicted on charges of tax evasion. The verbal attacks were the result of a vendetta Maverick held against Bellinger for swaying the black votes that nearly lost Maverick his seat in Congress. Beginning in February of 1936, Bellinger began serving his 18-month sentence on tax evasion. He served 6 months and then was released due to his declining health and a result of a petition for pardon being sent to President Franklin Roosevelt, signed by several prominent citizens of San Antonio. Bellinger had endured the challenges of being black in a white-run society, but stayed focused on fostering and enriching the African American community where he lived and did business. Paved streets, the first black library and auditorium are all attributed to his political prowess and philanthropic efforts. Charles Bellinger died on June 14, 1937, shortly after his release. He was survived by his first wife, Celestine Pullman, their 5 children, and his second wife, Addie Ray Scott. The San Antonio Light's tribute to Charles Bellinger from June 17, 1937, described him as the wealthiest Negro south of the Mason-Dixon. Charles and Celestine's eldest son, Charles Jr., better known as Velmo, accompanied his parents to San Antonio at the age of 5. He started his early schooling at St. Peter Claver's Catholic School. He was later sent to St. Thomas Military Academy, a Catholic college preparatory school in Minnesota. Fulfilling his patriotic duty, he too enlisted in the draft, but was not called. He studied at the University of Pennsylvania, and then finished at Harvard University. As the eldest son and heir to the political throne, Velmo slid into his father's shoes, continuing his father's legacy, rolling the African-American political machine in San Antonio. Velmo started his own newspaper in 1931 after the Enquirer newspaper, the only black newspaper in town, refused to run a full ad for a political candidate his father was endorsing. As a Harvard-educated entrepreneur, and what started as a retaliation against the Enquirer resulted in one of the most successful African-American newspapers in Texas. Velmo hired as a secretary bookkeeper Josephine Crawford, a very talented and intelligent individual who graduated from Western University in Kansas City, Kansas. The two married in 1939. Josephine contributed to the San Antonio Register with photo engravings, layouts, and the duties as an editor. She also organized a social section supplement and authored the column Joe's Jottings. After his father's death in 1937, Velmo liquidated his father's holdings and instead concentrated on publishing the San Antonio Register. Like his father, he worked with the African American community and with preachers, and in 1972 was instrumental in helping G.J. Sutton become the first local black man since Reconstruction to be elected to the Texas House of Representatives. This is a picture from our Texana Genealogy collection, along with the Bellinger Financial Ledgers, which are testimonies to the influence and the relationship that the Bellingers had in the African American community. The archival collection is comprised of 55 financial ledgers compiled from the Bellingers' documentation of the financial records produced during their oversight of various businesses. These financial records enumerate the income and the expenses of their vast domain. For almost 50 years, the Register was the voice of the East Side. Through the newspaper, the Bellinger family continued to wield considerable political direction both locally and nationally. The successful weekly San Antonio Register newspaper was in publication by the Bellingers from 1931 to 1978. Velmo sold the newspaper in 1979 due to health concerns. He died in 1994 at the age of 94. The impact of the Bellinger family, both politically and commercially, can still be felt in San Antonio's East Side. Some of the properties Bellinger owned were once prime real estate located off East Commerce Street. Some of these buildings are no longer standing, but the Bellinger name and the legacy lives on. For more information on the Bellinger archival collection and resources, please contact Texana Genealogy at genealogydesk@sanantonio.gov or call 210-207-2500 and ask for Texana. Thank you.